Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
Vic was used to his lectures being filled to capacity. His colleagues often joked that this part of the educational process could be monetized. Of course, professional recognition was somewhat flattering, but Professor Vic was not in the category of ambitious people. He was more interested in the process of transferring knowledge to the younger generation. At the end of every lecture, he would always say, "And if you remember at least a third of what I told you today, it's already a good result, and half of it is a great result." This last parting phrase became famous long ago and was repeated even in the student canteen or dormitory. Vic's lectures were very popular because the Doctor of Psychological Sciences explained everything clearly and understandably. He did not like to overload the listeners with a game of complex terms and spoke in simple and understandable language. After the professor's final word, a sigh of relief spread through the audience, but Vic was in no hurry to part with the students. "I want to add something from myself. The married life of my young friends is essentially a science. In this sphere, the language of ultimatums and threats is unacceptable. There are other rules." From the back row came a cheerful girl's voice. "Love." The professor smiled. Love. Much has been written about this feeling, and many wonderful movies have been made about it, but no one has yet been able to accurately describe it. If we look deeper, from the psychological point of view, mutual sympathy and affection between two individuals of the opposite sex cannot be eternal. The maximum duration does not exceed 7 years. A skinny guy in the front row shook his hand like a schoolboy to get the lecturer's attention. Vic nodded in agreement. "Was there something you wanted to clarify, young man?" "Yes. Does that mean, by your logic, that after 7 years of marriage, it's okay to get divorced?" Laughter rippled through the audience, but the professor was used to off-topic questions over the years. "It seems that you were not listening to me attentively. I said at the very beginning of the lecture that marriage is a form of partnership, and love is a pleasant addition to this partnership. And only the spouses themselves determine the duration of this wonderful feeling. And in general, family life is multifaceted. It is like a mosaic, consisting of different fragments, and each part of this panel is important. If one element disappears, the picture becomes incomplete." A girl sitting next to a boy who looked like a schoolboy asked defiantly, "Professor, then how should marital infidelity be interpreted? According to your version, does that mean there is nothing wrong with infidelity?" Vic looked at the girl intently, asking a provocative question in response. "You certainly remember the nursery rhyme about morality, about what is good and what is bad. I invite you to reread the works of the great poet once again, and you will surely find there the answer to your question. Do you have any other questions?" The girl who had failed flapped her doll-like eyelashes, while her neighbor openly gloated. "Our professor really put you in your place, Julia. Next time, think twice before asking uncomfortable questions." "But I asked him the right question. It's just that the professor is afraid to answer it honestly." Vic pretended not to hear the last remark and turned to face the door. He looked around again and met the girl's gaze with the girl who had failed. The pretty face was contorted with anger, and lightning flashed in the green eyes. The man endured that unpleasant look and thought, "Looks like I've made another enemy today. Now this pretty girl will take revenge on me." Over the years of his teaching career, Professor Vic had found himself in difficult life situations more than once. Being a charismatic man, he attracted women to him like a magnet. Not only young female students paid attention to him, which was forgivable given their age, but also mature ladies. The men of the faculty frankly envied him. "Vic, can you already organize auditions or form a harem? How many suitors do you have, and how do you manage them all?" The professor always tried to turn such conversations into a joke. "I have to use all my hidden resources. After all, every woman deserves attention. A real man has no right to deny her that." The professor's personal life was always on the agenda of the female members of the faculty. His love affairs were legendary. But Vic considered even gossip an important part of his image. He kept his distance from his colleagues, which only fueled new rumors. After the lecture, he walked into the rector's office and quickly dressed. "Goodbye, colleagues. Have a good weekend." The gray-haired lady sat down and curtsied, jokingly saying, "Vic, may all good things come to you as well." The others present nodded almost simultaneously, and when the door closed behind the professor, they began to discuss him heatedly. I wonder if his wife knows of his scheming, but I am not at all interested in that. I think it's unseemly to gnaw on other people's bones. Vic does the right thing. Women throw themselves at him, so why give up that pleasure? Clara, a lady who had impressed the faculty with her knowledge of palace etiquette, remarked with a sense of irony, "Am I not at a prestigious university, but at a flea market? Friends, this is indecent." The woman's dress fluttered with excitement, exposing her new curls. In response to her emotional statement, someone said softly, "Another victim of unrequited love, but there's no chance here. Vic prefers the young and slim." The evening city always evoked the most beautiful associations in the professor's soul. Sometimes he even composed rhymes in his head without writing them down. Cars whizzed by, but he did not hurry after them. He wondered why there were so few opportunities to enjoy these stunning views of the evening city. At times like this, his soul longed for a holiday. Vic occasionally allowed himself to ponder aloud, but it was rare. He didn't put his expensive SUV in the parking lot, but parked it in the yard. And on the way home he stopped at a flower store and was now rushing to the driveway with a bouquet of chrysanthemums. "Honey, I'm home," came his wife's voice from the bathroom. "You're home early today. I'll be there in a couple minutes." Kathy, with a lush wooden hat on her head, came out into Vic's living room, blushing, with his wife's face and a lovely mole on her dainty neck. "You are simply charming." He handed the woman a bouquet, and she closed her eyes, inhaling the scent of autumn flowers. "What a delight. Vic, tell me, what's the occasion for giving flowers today? Do you need a special occasion to do a nice thing to a loved one?" Tonight was an unusual evening. I was driving and enjoying the views of the city, and I really wanted to share my joy with you. And here's why. And that, my dear Kathy, is why I'm inviting you to the restaurant. "Vic, but you should have warned me in my condition." "I could have, but I didn't. You said yourself that unexpected surprises are more pleasant." Kathy threw a towel at her husband with feigned disapproval. "Vic, sometimes I think you see through me like an X-ray, and frankly, it scares me. Why did I marry a psychology professor? You had no other choice. Besides, when you agreed to be my wife, I was just a grad student. Vic, don't distract me with idle chatter, or I'll need until midnight to pack." The woman disappeared into the bedroom, and from the quiet noise coming from there, it was easy to guess that she was choosing an outfit. The professor waited patiently, sitting on the couch and replaying the recent events in his head. "Kathy, imagine this. Today a student decided to embarrass me. Did she or did she not succeed? I don't know. I was giving a lecture on the psychology of family relationships, which of course excited my restless listeners. Kathy, strutting around in front of her husband in a tight black dress. How do I look? You look great in any outfit. Thank you. 5 more minutes and I'll be ready. So what was your student's question? Nothing much, actually. She asked about infidelity. Of course, she was not only interested in the domestic aspect, but also the scientific explanation or my personal opinion." Katie looked at her husband with a questioning look, concern reflected on her face. "And what was my professor's answer?" "There is hardly a one-syllable answer to that question. How many people, so many opinions?" And the woman, embracing her husband, whispered, "I don't want to know anything about your infidelity. And whoever tells me that you are cheating on me will be my greatest enemy." The man gently pushed his wife away. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely." She stood up abruptly with feigned cheerfulness and declared, "Are we going to the restaurant, or are we going to get into other people's problems? You're not cheating on me, are you? And I didn't get into that kind of stuff either. By the way, I got my share today. I've already regretted 100 times that I quit practicing at the clinic and became a civil servant." Vic realized that his wife wanted to change the subject. They spent a wonderful evening in the best restaurant in town, and Kathy willingly shared her work problems with her husband. "You know, I often catch myself thinking I've turned into something like that." "Well, that's an exaggeration. Where does that come from?" "Just think about it. I'm well aware of the challenges that medical professionals face on a daily basis. People often work at the limit of their abilities, trying, pardon the expression, to create something useful out of waste. It can be called a feat. But our commission shows up and turns the heroes almost into criminals. But this situation is not only in medicine. I agree, but we must fight it. Don't be afraid to get involved. Katie, tell me honestly, what are you up to? I want to go back to the clinic. In fact, I've been invited there. Are you sure that's what you want? Do you really want to plunge back into the nightmare of round-the-clock duty, betrayals, co-workers, and other side effects of the profession? Katie pushed her empty plate away. The cooking here is great too. The woman was silent for a while. She nervously twirled a strand of hair on her finger, as if it would help her find the right words. Understand, dear, I need something to fill the void. We try to avoid the subject, but everyone thinks you're thinking about it too, and I know you are. Katie, please don't start. We agreed on everything with you a long time ago. No, Vic, you've made up your mind for both of us. You give a lecture today. I'm not arguing that psychology is a useful science, and you're right that a family is built on trust. But it's not about trust and respect and all those other hackneyed terms. Without children, a family is like an amorphous entity. Vic saw that his wife was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He took her trembling hands and kissed them. Kathy, you're a doctor yourself and you realize you can't constantly berate yourself. You have to accept it. Many couples live happily without children. Others adopt. I'm willing to accept whatever you decide, but please don't torture yourself. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. Of course, adopting a child from an orphanage is a noble cause, but I've always dreamed of having a child of my own. And every day that dream gets farther and farther away. Soon there won't be any chance of it coming true. Have you forgotten that in a few months I will be 35 years old? The man made a funny face. Madam, you're lying. You are fresh and young. The woman smiled against her will. Thank you. You always support me. How could it be otherwise? You're the only woman I truly love. Katie had heard her husband say this solemn assurance many times, but the more he repeated these words, the more doubts about their sincerity crept into her soul. Katie was the only child in the family, but she was brought up mainly by her grandmother, as her parents had other concerns. The girl's mother could not live a day without social work, and her father began as a simple worker, but over the years of hard work rose to a director's position. The peak of the career of the head of the family coincided with global transformations in the country, and Joe was able to correctly orient it, buying shares in his company. This was only the beginning of the movement to a prosperous life. The wave of perestroika threw the enterprising worker to the surface, where the cream of society gathered. Soon he was elected to the board of directors. The high position of her father opened almost any door in front of Katie, but thanks to the upbringing of her grandmother, the girl grew up an obedient child and never made exaggerated demands. The girl's upbringing was admired by teachers. Wow, such modesty in such parents. Some of them, like spoiled brats, whiting their fingers at teachers, rude, and Katie compared to them, an angel in the flesh. But excessive modesty was despised by those who quickly rose from dirt to princess. Katie was threatened on more than one occasion, and once her peers decided to stage a public punishment to intimidate others. But it was only by chance that the humiliating punishment was avoided. The old man sensed something wrong when a crowd of teenagers broke into the territory of a dilapidated factory. For a small fee, he guarded the abandoned plant from intruders. In doing so, he used a police whistle. The criminals were not expecting an unauthorized intervention, and at the first sound of the whistle scattered. At the sight of the failed punishment, the villains left the camera and Katie. The old man carefully turned the device in his hands, trying to understand how this device works. After all, at that time, Japanese technology was a great rarity. Kathy was familiar with such a device and told the old man that everything was simple. All you have to do is press this red button. That's it. Why are you so smart? Did they want to beat you up? They think I'm proud and conceited. You're not. The girl shook her head. But even if you hadn't helped me, I wouldn't have asked those bastards for help. Oh, you're a brave girl. And where do you live? Can you accompany me? Where else would I go? And suddenly these, what did you call them? Bastards? Ambush around the corner. The kind old man was walking the girl almost all the way home when he was called from behind. Grandpa, what are you doing here? Who authorized you to leave your post? The old man shuddered and froze in place, but then turned around and scolded the approaching guy. The guy burst into laughter. Vic, can you scare your own grandfather like that? I almost died and fell over. Katie laughed too, because the old man clumsily swung his cane, trying to hit his grandson with it, but the boy kept dodging the blows. Finally, he caught up with us, but the girl felt that Vic had deliberately given up. For a 14-year-old girl, a second-year student of the capital's university seemed an unattainable adult. The boy asked her a few questions more out of politeness than out of interest. When he learned that the grandfather had saved the girl from her peers, he was not even surprised. My old man was used to being on guard. In his day, he wielded not only a cane, but also a Makarov pistol. He saved many lives and caught dozens, if not hundreds, of criminals. The girl looked at the old man with admiration, and he even blushed with embarrassment. Vic, don't embarrass me in front of the lady. A man should not brag about his achievements. Why waste words? It's better to invite a girl for tea, exclaimed the young man smoothly. Come to our house today. If I'm not mistaken, we are neighbors. Grandfather lives in the second entrance, apartment 45, and I visit him sometimes when I'm bored. Katie nodded in agreement, but she wasn't going to visit. She didn't tell her parents anything about what had happened. They would have stayed in the dark if it hadn't been for her grandmother. At dinner, she told a terrible story, which was told to her by a good acquaintance in the store. That grandfather worked as an operative for about 30 years, and now works as a security guard on a well-deserved vacation, looking after the territory of the plant. And the other day there was almost an accident there. Teenagers beat up a schoolgirl, and the grandfather saved the girl. There's no telling what could have happened. Katie decided to make a correction. Grandma, they wanted to start a fight, but it didn't come to that. How do you know the details? The girl blushed, caught off guard, and Grandma triumphantly declared that there was no point in hiding it from me. And you know it very well. You were almost targeted. My parents were shocked by what they heard. Joe even lost his appetite from the confusion. The times we live in, it's not even safe to go to regular school anymore. Grandma continued with the same incomprehensible joy. That's right, Joe. Regular school. But you've got connections. You can get the kid into a grammar school, where the children of these, new rich people go. Are we any worse than them? You're always right, Mom. I'll take care of it tomorrow. The father turned out to be a man of his word, and the next day transferred his daughter to a prestigious school. Although Katie didn't like this sudden change, she was used to obeying her father. On the first day of school, she met Vic, the grandson of the old watchman. He recognized her immediately. It's not good to lie. We waited for you and your grandfather all evening, and you didn't show up. You didn't even tell us your name, which is even sadder. Katie didn't know where to hide from the prying eyes that shot arrows from every direction. As she was talking to the cute intern, she started mumbling something. Vic was clearly enjoying her confusion. So you don't run off again, Katie. I'll walk you home after class, okay? By the way, I didn't even know you were in this gymnasium. Today is my first day, and I've been practicing here for a week already, so to speak, studying the psychology of modern school children. After class, Vic was really waiting for Katie at the entrance, high school girl, and immediately began to discuss this burning topic. Young ladies could not understand how the new girl managed to captivate such a cool guy from the first day. They looked at Katie with envy. And when Vic's practice was over, the first beauty of the class asked, "Where's your boyfriend?" This question embarrassed the girl, and she began to justify herself. "Vic is not my boyfriend. We just met by chance and are just chatting." The girls nodded understandingly, but there was doubt in their eyes. "Yeah, well, you were just hanging out. We believed you, telling tales to others. Well, that's your own business." Vic hadn't been in town for over 2 years. Katie saw him again when she was in her senior year of high school. The young man was finishing his university studies at the time. Here he is again, to do an internship, then get a diploma, and then theoretically, a job. But this is not part of my plans. I want to go to graduate school. For the young girl, everything Vic said seemed an unattainable height. She listened to him, afraid to ask too many questions, realizing that his plans made a strong impression on the graduate. The young man asked, "Where are you going, Katie?" "To medical school." "Oh, that's a bold statement. By the way, I can help with connections." "No, that won't be necessary. I'll be fine on my own." "Are you that confident in your abilities?" "No, I'm not. But my father is against using connections and other ways of easy entry." Vic looked at the girl carefully. "Your father is right. You can tell he's old school." "Mine too." He told me not to count on his help, but I was incredibly lucky to get in. I got in on the first try. Katie remembered that spring for the rest of her life. She and Vic met almost every day and just chatted about life. Several times the young man invited her to a cafe where they ate the most delicious ice cream. There were no hints of something more from the guys, but in the heart of the girl already sprouted the first sprouts of a strong feeling. This budding love gave her confidence. Perhaps it was this optimistic attitude that helped the girl to withstand all the exams. When Katie saw her name on the list of those admitted to the institute, her heart sang with joy. Vic was sincerely worried for her friend and also rejoiced at her success. "Well done, Kathy. Now all I have to do is take care of you. After all, you don't mind." "What do you mean?" "I'm all for it. If you are, be prepared for the worst." Kathy was used to his jokes and played along. "Look at that. I haven't even said yes yet, and you're already threatening me. I'll tell you a secret. You'll be punished for every failure. If you fail a section, you're stuck in the dorm for a month. I'll think about other punishments later." The first 2 years of school were difficult. Katie spent half the night studying. In the morning, she was desperate for sleep. After lectures, she had to go to the hospital several times a week to complete the mandatory practical hours. So meetings with Vic became rare, but he called often. In the third year, student life gradually fell into place. Relations with Vic imperceptibly moved to a new level. The young man moved step by step towards his goal and was already planning the defense of his dissertation. His status imposed certain obligations on him, so it was necessary to change the room in the dormitory to a rented apartment. Kathy took this news with joy and offered the guy her help. "Vic, if you don't mind, I'll help you organize your bachelor apartment. I'll be more than happy." "I wanted to ask you myself, but I didn't dare." He looked at the girl for a long time, but it was a different look. "Katie, the truth is, I wanted to have you by my side all the time. You're an extraordinary girl, and you make me feel good." That night she stayed at Vic's place and soon moved into his rented apartment. Classmates frankly envied and reviled them. A provincial girl. And one particularly zealous gossip girl decided to add another insult to Katie's happy life. Finding a convenient moment after a lecture, she told her in detail about the alleged affairs of a young graduate student. "Look, I had no idea you and Vic were so serious. I don't deny he's handsome, and there's no denying his success. But he's jumping from bed to bed. The girls told me that the grad student even had an affair with the head of the department. They said she helped him get ahead, and someone in our group told me that." Katie interrupted the flow of gossip. "Don't bother. I don't believe a word you say anyway, and gossip isn't really my thing. And you better stay out of my sight." Offended well-wishers shouted loudly after her. "She's a collective farm idiot. They wish her the best and she snorts. Well, soon we'll see the end of this happy story. Your grad student will ask you for help and dump you. It's a classic, and you're no exception." Katie was used to trusting people, and Vic had long been the standard of decency. Though she didn't believe the rumors much, a grain of distrust settled in her heart. She cried all evening, and at night she felt sick. She had severe stomach pains and had to call an ambulance. She was immediately taken to the hospital to the operating room. Soon the doctor came out and said to Vic, "What you did not say to your spouse. It is sad that the first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage." Vic couldn't recover for a long time. He sat next to Katie all night. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" "Vic, I didn't know. I didn't suspect. But something must have caused it. You're right. Some ill-wisher told me about your adventures, and you believed it?" "No, but it was very unpleasant to hear." "Katie, you realize you can't believe everything. You could have asked me, and I would have given you an honest answer." "Would you?" I was embarrassed to ask. "Of course, you know how much I love you." Kathy cried, and there was bitterness of loss in those tears, but there was happiness in them too. After being discharged from the hospital, they immediately applied for marriage. In her heart, the young woman believed that the first failed pregnancy was just a coincidence, an unpleasant episode. But as the years went by, she couldn't bear a child. Katie traveled to all the best resorts. She was treated in expensive clinics, but each new pregnancy ended in the death of the child. Vic couldn't bear to see his wife suffer from infertility. "Katie, please stop torturing yourself. I'm begging you. I don't like that your desire to get pregnant has become an obsession. It's not normal." and I can see that your obsession is taking a toll on your mental state." The woman looked at her husband strangely. "Vic, if I'm abnormal, if it's determined in a special institution, then I can't change everything that's in my head. I can't do anything about it. Do you understand? I dream about kids every night, babies that I couldn't bear, and it's horrible." The man tried his best to comfort his wife, but her confession only further confirmed his suspicions. It was at his insistence that Katie was transferred from the children's hospital, where she disappeared for days at a time, to the regional health department. He thought that the new position would at least lighten things up a bit. And indeed, positive changes took place immediately. Katie regained her interest in life. Laura appeared in his life by chance. For Vic, his wife has always been the embodiment of female attractiveness. He intuitively looked for familiar features in any woman who caught his eye. But when he first saw Laura in the classroom, he immediately felt a long-forgotten excitement. The second-year student was an exact replica of the young Katie who had captivated his heart. Lectures on psychology were not compulsory for students of the philological faculty, where the girl studied, but she diligently attended them. The most surprising thing is that the girl listened to the lecturer, holding her breath. Vic for many years got used to feeling the gazes of others, but in their eyes it was not just interest in the subject, but something more. It went on like this for over 2 months, and one day Vic couldn't stand it and asked the girl to stay after the lecture. She just nodded her head in agreement and waited for the audience to be free. He tried to be friendly. He asked, "Tell me please, what is the reason for your interest in my lectures? If I am not mistaken, you are studying philology." The girl, hesitating, replied, "Yes, but I have always been interested in psychology. My friends told me a lot about your lectures, so I decided to broaden my horizons." Is that a bad thing? On the contrary, such a desire for knowledge should be welcomed. But if you are interested in this discipline, maybe you should think about changing your faculty. No, I really need to finish philological." The girl was afraid to look him in the eye and blushed constantly, growing paler and paler. In moments of excitement, she looked remarkably like Kathy. Vic asked the student a few more meaningless questions and let her go to the next lecture. The girl didn't show up. She was absent the following days as well. And Vic became worried. Suddenly he realized that he missed those eyes, in which a whole range of feelings wanted to come out. He asked the guy who always sat next to her, "Strange girl, do you happen to know where your neighbor has disappeared to?" "Laura. Oh, she twisted her leg in an athletics competition. She's resting in her dorm now. Some people are lucky. We're working like slaves on a plantation. Your look, young man, doesn't look like a man burdened with hard labor." The boy turned out to be a clever boy, and he got into an argument with the teacher. "Didn't you yourself say not so long ago that appearances can be deceiving?" "Well, based on appearances, I'm going to be a healthy guy. It's very tiring." After the lecture, I can't even find the right words to compare it to. By the way, the girl Laura you're interested in is a real tin soldier. I just love girls like that. You see, there are role models. Well, no. Sorry, but Zavialova can't serve as an example in the realities of modern life. I wonder why. Because, how shall I put it, she's not exactly well off. She's been going around in the same skirt and blouse for 2 years now, so our girls shun her. But I talk to her sometimes. You know, general stuff. Why are you interested, Laura? Just curious. She used to attend my lectures, and then she disappeared. Perhaps you'd like me to give her a message? If you'd like, I could accompany you. We live on the same floor in the dormitory. Vic himself, without knowing why, agreed to go to the dormitory with a student in the dormitory. He had never allowed himself to do such a thing before. But Laura had touched some thin strings in his soul. On the way, Joe, that was the name of the fighting guy, spilled everything he knew about Laura. I didn't pay much attention to it, but our classmates said Laura had been sent away to school. Either she came from a dysfunctional family or her father had died in the line of duty. I won't lie, but I know for a fact that it's always hard for her financially. But she never asks for help. She's too proud, and she doesn't even accept help. Thank you for the information. Do you think she would accept a small gift from us? Today I plan to fry potatoes. The guy scratched his head. I can't promise, but we can try to convince our hostile mom to look on the bright side. The girl didn't expect to see Vic and was at a loss for words at his appearance. She was giving Joe strange signals. He only shrugged his shoulders. Laura, I'm not involved in this. I just helped when I was asked. You haven't seen the light of day for almost 2 weeks. So to accommodate the guests, Joe handed out bags of groceries like a host. Okay, I'm gonna go to my room. Do you want me to bring you something to eat? I'm planning on frying potatoes tonight. Laura looked at Vic and blushed again. No, Joe, I'm not hungry. Accompanied by Vic, the student left, and he was left alone with the girl, who could not recover from the embarrassment. The situation was awkward for both of them, and the teacher hurried to say goodbye. In the name of justice, I will wait for you in my lectures. He walked down the long corridor under curious stares and scolded himself for rash behavior. Why did I go to this dormitory? Giving them extra material for gossip, Vic was not indifferent to all things human. In his life there were short but pleasant romances, but family always remained his top priority, and he wasn't about to change his priorities in life. On the way home, he tried to figure out what had touched his heart so much. A week later, he saw Laura again, and he felt at peace. After the lecture, the girl stayed to thank him for his concern. There was no longer fear in her eyes, and she was smiling. Thank you, Vic. It was so unexpected that I was confused and did not even offer you tea. That's all right. I think we'll have a chance to talk again. And such an opportunity did present itself. At the end of February, the news spread around the university that there was an opportunity to rest at the recreation center. Excited Kira went around with a notebook and wrote down all the students who wanted to go. The public was not left out, including Vic, who at this time was busy preparing for his defense. Tapping her pencil on the list, she explained to her colleagues. Most of them are the students who have shown the best results in their studies. But to control this restless crowd, we need a few teachers, preferably men. Comrades, who agrees? No one expressed a desire to spend the weekend away from the city. Then Kira decided to employ the reliable voluntary coercive method. If there are no volunteers, I as the senior have the authority. I'm asking you, Vic, to go to this recreation center. The man was taken aback. But I have other plans. Soon defense. It's so unexpected. Kira confidently shook her curls, putting on her glasses. Well, everything in life is unexpected. We can't draw lots here. You're the youngest on our team. It's your honor. Don't feel bad. There will be a great program with disco and games. The sponsors have decided to give our students a party. The woman winked coquettishly and replied, If I were younger, I wouldn't miss a single party. After such a convincing argument, Vic was embarrassed to refuse when he told his wife about the trip. She was happy for him and said, Vic, that's great. You work so hard. You need to relax and have fun. I wouldn't mind having some fun with the college crowd myself. Kathy was genuinely happy for her husband, but even in her worst nightmare, she couldn't imagine how the trip would end. And indeed, the recreation program was rich, from skiing and sledding to delicious fish for lovers of winter fishing. Then the youth organized the competition of snow sculptures, and the highlight of the program was the evening disco. The holiday was in full swing. Having gone down to the hall of the first floor to make sure that the young people behaved decently, Vic had to make sure that the administration of the campground took care of everything, and there would be no alcohol. A tight work schedule did not allow Vic to attend such entertainment events even in his younger years. Therefore, finding himself among the changing lights and unnatural distortions, he not only felt lost, but also lost himself in space. Suddenly, he heard cheerful laughter and someone gently touched his arm. Vic, join us. He looked around, trying to identify his interlocutor. Don't you recognize me? It's me, Laura. He scrutinized the face of the girl with the bold makeup and could hardly recognize the demure Laura in her. The student was pleased with the impression she had made and laughed merrily. I can't always be a fool. I try to follow your advice. At one of your lectures, you said that sometimes you need to change everything 180 degrees. So I decided to test it out on myself. This is the rule. Energetic music started playing, and Laura began to dance to the beat. Vic caught himself thinking that he wanted something more than just watching the dance. Vic, why are you dancing? I can't dance like that. And when I was young, other dances were in vogue. The fast composition changed to a slow one and the girl leaned towards Vic. He felt an electric shock run through his body, but it was another Laura who attracted him like a magnet. The disco ended far past midnight and the vacationers lazily scattered to their rooms. Vic escorted the girl to room number 11, but no sooner had she entered than Laura immediately jumped outside. What's wrong? Nothing much. It's just that my roommate is in there, but she's not alone. The man shrugged. It happens, but you can't go against nature. The girl looked at him expectantly, and in her gaze he could read something that was not to be spoken aloud. The man interpreted this silent appeal correctly, and in a voice trembling with excitement he offered, "I have a single room, but there's a cozy couch where I can settle down. What do you say?" "No, I don't want to inconvenience you. I'd rather wait here in the hallway." It seems to me that your willingness to sacrifice yourself in this situation is not justified. You're not inconveniencing me at all. Vic playfully opened the door to the room. "Come in." Everything that followed seemed like a dream. The mind receded. It wasn't until morning that the man realized what had happened. He was tormented by guilt. He tried to intensify this feeling. He began to think about his wife, who was far away and did not know about his cheating. He sighed heavily. It must have been too loud because Laura stirred next to him. "Can I sleep some more? I feel so good. I had such sweet dreams tonight." He glanced at Laura's watch. It was already 8:30. It would be breakfast soon. It wasn't hunger that worried him at the moment, but something else. He realized that the hallways would soon be bustling with activity, and he didn't want to be seen with Laura. The girl reached under the blanket. "I'll just stand here for a minute." Vic was the first to get out of bed and headed for the shower. When he returned to the room, she was no longer there. Only the smell of her perfume reminded him of the madness of that night. For the rest of the day, Vic tried not to think about his careless act. At first, he berated himself for his momentary weakness because he had never had an affair with a female student before. He decided that he should immediately break off all ties so that this casual crush would not develop into something more serious. But Laura had other plans. She continued to attend his lectures and always waited for him in the hallway afterward. This constant presence soon began to annoy him. "Laura, stop following me around. It would be better if we both forgot what happened between us." "Vic, better for whom?" "For you, first and foremost. This stupidity doesn't have to ruin your life or mine. You need to focus on your studies." The girl repeated his last sentence helplessly. "Yes, I need to focus on my studies. Forgive me, I won't bother you anymore." After this conversation, the girl stopped attending his lectures. The unpleasant burden of responsibility for the fate of this lovely creature was lifted from his soul. Life returned to its usual course, and Vic decided not to allow himself such carelessness from now on. The vacation season was approaching, and Laura decided to remind him of her existence. She was waiting for him in the park near the university. Vic saw her from afar and waved to her. He decided to limit himself to that greeting, but the girl got up from the bench and headed towards him. She was wearing a light dress that fluttered in the wind, and as the colors of the fabric tightly encased the girl's figure, he noticed her bulging belly. The shock was so intense that Vic couldn't move. An inner voice reassured him. This simply couldn't be happening. "No, it's not possible." Laura was silent and looked at him with desperation in her eyes. "Vic, help me, please. What am I supposed to do? Why are you asking me this question? I'm sorry, but I don't believe this is my child. Or did you have some kind of plan? It's your baby, and I'm supposed to take your word for it." She nodded and burst into tears, trying not to attract the attention of those around her. Vic pushed the girl into the car. He spoke to Laura harshly, even harshly. "Look, honey, if you thought you could buy me with your tears, you were wrong. I don't respond to such tricks anymore. Now, about your desperate situation. You're the one who made the decision to do this, and like a normal man, I accepted the challenge. No, I'm not abdicating my responsibility. I will not be manipulated. And one more thing. Don't think I'd leave my wife for you." The sobs intensified. "Vic, what am I supposed to do then? Why are you asking me this question? I'm sorry, but I don't believe it's my child. But even if it is, that doesn't give you the right to make any demands on me. You're a grown woman and you made this decision on your own. I didn't promise you anything. Nothing." Vic turned down the first alley he came across and stopped the car. "Let's make a deal. I'll help you, but you won't make any demands on me." "Agreed." Through her tears, Vic heard the answer he'd been waiting for. "You realize you'll have to leave school for a while and get a job. I'll give you some money and you can come home. You have parents or relatives, don't you?" "No, no one. My mom was, but she died." Something prickled in the man's heart. "But you must have a place to live, right?" I don't have anything. When my father was gone, my mom went into debt. She took out loans and couldn't pay them off. So they took away our apartment. We lived with my mom's friend for a long time, and then a lump of nausea rose in my throat. But housing gotta go somewhere. Vic struggled to squeeze out that mom couldn't cope and decided to leave this world on her own. The girl cried, burying her face in the back of the seat. And after all, it was her friend Aunt Zoya who had chosen a target direction for me to study. He consoled her as one consoles small children. Don't cry like that. There's nothing you can do now. In your condition, tears are contraindicated. I won't leave you alone with your misfortune. Anyone can be in this situation, and so can I. What happened to your father? Your friend Joe said he was dead. The girl smiled through her tears. You, Vic, are a lot like my father. I don't remember him very well because I was very little. Yes, he died. My mom didn't like to talk about it, so I don't know much about the incident. We only have his medal. It was given to him posthumously. That meaning turned everything upside down in the mind of a psychology teacher. He was trying to understand why some people are lucky and others are plagued by adversity. What had this unfortunate little girl done from birth that she deserved such hardships? What did she do wrong? This is a question that Laura herself has tried to answer many times. All the days blended into one continuous gray blur, and only her little son Jack made her want to live. And sometimes at night she had vivid dreams about the past, when she was foolish and naive, and believed in love from happy thoughts. Her reflections were interrupted by her son's voice. Mom, am I not going to school again today? Yes, my dear, you will have to miss a few days. Mom, why am I always sick? Where did you learn to say that? Our teacher said I'm weak, that's why I'm sick. I was sick a lot when I was a kid too, and my mom was always on sick leave. She was scolded for it at work. Does your boss scold you for being sick too? Son, let's not think about it, eat porridge. To be strong, you have to eat well. You always have a full plate. Laura put the plate of steaming porridge on the table next to the bed. I'll bring tea and honey later. We don't have any honey right now. But I'll buy some when your daddy sends us some money. Maybe I'll get a paycheck soon and I'll buy you honey and vitamins. Jack didn't want porridge. Laura watched him. Conflicting feelings were struggling in her soul. She regarded motherhood as the ultimate gift and her son as her greatest miracle. But the unsettled life, due to lack of money, had become an insoluble problem. But the worst thing was that lately she was thinking more and more often about her mother's untimely death, and that frightened her the most. At first, Vic had actually helped her. Through his connections, he provided the future mother and child with a place to live. And although a room in the dormitory cannot be considered the pinnacle of desires, it is still some corner. Thanks to her patron, Laura got a job and even received maternity leave. Vic sent her regular remittances and visited her once a month. Oddly enough, Jack was a miniature copy of his father. He had the same smile and even gestures. That's why Vic never brought up the subject of paternity. During their short meetings, he always gave time to his little son, as if trying to stock up on positive emotions. But the most touching was the moment when the baby stretched out his hand to him and clearly said, "Daddy." Vic picked up his son, and they spun around the room together. "Yes, I am your daddy, son, and I want you to grow up healthy and happy." The baby laughed happily, and Laura enjoyed this happy scene. When Jack grew older, Vic brought him a tricycle as a present. The boy's delight was boundless, but even the father with childish enthusiasm tried to teach the child to ride a bicycle. And then, saying goodbye, he hugged Laura for the first time in many years and quietly said, "Thank you for our son, and forgive me if you can. You don't need to apologize to me because I'm happy." She looked into his eyes for a long time, and he did not look away. It was the look of a woman who had learned the true taste of life, not a naive girl, and he felt uncomfortable. He caught himself again in the thought that he was always trying to make amends, but he was afraid to admit it to himself. "Laura, you said there's no need to be shy. I might inadvertently miss something important. You've been a great help to us. The only thing I want to ask is that you come here more often. Jack misses you so much. You know, he tells stories about you in kindergarten." "That's interesting. If you could tell us more about Jack's fantasies." The teacher told us that she wanted to punish him for bad behavior, but he proudly told her that he would complain to his daddy, who is a professor. And how did the poor teacher react to this threat? She thought Jack was joking, and then she asked me about your profession. Lately my son has been asking why you don't live with us. Vic was silent. All the way back, he thought about doing something. It seemed that living with two families wasn't going to work. Something had to be done, but there was no way out of the impasse. But the number of visits suddenly decreased. Perhaps the man decided that his rare visits would help Laura and her son get used to the idea that they could never become a full-fledged family. Mama don't get that disgusting much in me no more. Jack pushed the plate away. Okay, I won't force you, son. I've got to go to work and you get some rest. I won't be long. The doctor should be here soon. Laura worked on the assembly line at the dairy, and her frequent sick leaves were affecting the production process. That's what the department head said. Taking 3 deep breaths, the woman knocked on the door. Oh, Laura, what brings you here? I was told this morning that you were on sick leave again. Anna, my son is sick again. I don't know what to do. I'll tell you what, quit your job and stay home. Why don't I just grab the first guy I see on the street? You're always trying to stump me, aren't you? Well, Anna, I'm 42 years old. We'd all understood your situation and even sympathized. When the child was little, we thought he'd get over it, stop getting sick. Maybe you're not taking good care of the boy, and it's time for us to involve the appropriate authorities. Anna, how can you say such things? I was just reminding you as a preventative measure. But think for yourself why you're so suspicious. Go and take care of your child. Is there anything else? Yes, if it's all right, I'd like a small advance. The primary care physician referred me to the diagnostic center because Jack's test results were bad. No problem. But when will you get your paycheck? The doctor listened to Jack's lungs and heart for a long time. Then he laid the boy on the couch and tapped his bulging ribs with his fingers. Mommy, why is your boy so thin? You must be keeping him on a diet? Jack decided to stick up for his mom. Mommy feeds me and nurses me when I'm sick. I just don't feel like eating. The doctor smirked. Good for you. If you're protecting your mom, then get dressed. I won't be needing your fingers anymore. He rolled his eyes. The boy explained. So they're going to take blood from my vein. You'll have to be patient. Mommy, I've written to you urgently. Be sure to come see me later. There may be some additional tests that need to be done. Laura and her son spent the whole day at the diagnostic center. They went from office to office having him examined and scanned and ended up with piles of papers. They knocked on the office of the doctor who had seen them that morning. And I thought you had already gone home. Good thing you caught me. It's a long walk. Tired of walking, Laura sat down on the couch. Almost 100 kilometers. We're afraid we'll miss the last bus. That's fine. I'll try not to hold you up. But as the doctor looked through the papers, his face grew more and more tense. My young friend, can you wait for your mom in the hallway? Jack didn't need to be told twice, and he slipped out the door. There was something in the doctor's demeanor that Laura immediately sensed something wrong. Tell me, what's wrong with my son? The doctor was silently fiddling with a ballpoint pen. We don't know for sure yet, but the boy's tests are not very good. Actually, they're very bad. I don't want to scare you, but these results indicate a malignant disease. Laura felt her heart racing and found it hard to breathe. The doctor noticed that her condition had changed. You're not feeling well? It's nothing, I can manage. I just didn't expect it to be this serious. We can take the boy to the hospital for further examination. No, doctor, we better come again if we have to. It's just vital right now. I'll expect you in exactly 10 days. Laura spent the whole night without sleep. Her imagination painted the most terrible pictures, which she tried with all her might to drive away from her. She stroked her sleeping son's hand. She consoled herself. Nothing. I'll definitely think of something. Where can I get the money? I could ask for help from an unemployment fund, or I could get a loan from the bank. No one will give me an advance, and taking a loan is very dangerous. She remembered her mother's tragic fate and immediately dismissed the idea. And among us, Jack will confirm it. The treatment is very expensive. We'll have to ask Vic for help. He can't say no when it comes to saving his son. Just before dawn, exhausted from her worries, Laura fell into a troubled sleep, and outside the window the sun was already beginning to rise. She dialed the number Vic had left her, but the automated voice answered that such a number did not exist. Then she decided on a desperate measure. One day during her visit, Vic went for a walk with his son, leaving his cell phone on the table. During his absence, the phone rang. and a number consisting of the word wife popped up on the screen. The woman wrote down the number, not knowing that she would soon have to call Vic's wife. There was an elevated mood in the lecture hall, and this youthful enthusiasm was transferred to the professor, who excitedly revealed the secrets of personal success in business. After Vika's lecture, the very blonde who had tried to put him in a difficult position more than once stopped him with her question. "Professor, I have a question. I can already guess what it is. It's nice to know that I finally have your attention. I try to give equal attention to all my listeners, so what's bothering you this time?" "Well, I'll tell you. From what you've told us today, it seems that almost anyone can succeed. Then why do most entrepreneurs fail?" Again, you weren't listening to me very well. Motivation alone is not enough. Persistence and desire alone will not get you far. Talent is necessary even in business, as well as in any other business. But I always thought that talent is art, literature, movies. Yes, that's all right. It's a separate topic altogether. But I can say that talent is the highest level of skill, and mastery must be honed over the years. Is that clear now? I think so. Then it turns out that all the stories about miraculous success and million-dollar incomes are a myth. Why, there are lucky people who immediately achieve success, but their success is due to rationality and a competent approach to solving important problems. But for most businessmen, at least for those with whom I am closely acquainted, the road to success was long and thorny. Julia snorted skeptically. "Well, just like the famous saying, it's a long road to stardom." "Julia, it's not a saying. It's a famous quote from Seneca, the ancient Roman philosopher. You know so much that it's enough to drive you crazy. On the contrary, Julia, knowledge is power. And I even like the fact that you keep asking me off-topic questions, even though many of them are clearly provocative." Kathy met her husband in the hallway. From the expression on her face, he realized that something unpleasant had happened in his absence. "Kathy, you're as gloomy as a storm cloud. What's the matter?" The woman never took her eyes off her husband. "Laura called me today." Vic froze, but tried not to show his confusion. "The thing is that your son..." The man lost his temper. "What's wrong with him?" "He's sick. He's been given a terrible diagnosis, and now he needs immediate help." "KB, I'll explain everything to you. Later, it turned out like this. I didn't see it coming." "I don't need you to explain anything to me. I don't want to listen to you. If you destroyed all faith in me, at least give hope to those who still believe in you." Vic started pacing around the apartment. "I don't know why she called. I asked her not to call." Kathy walked over to him and took hold of the lapel of his jacket. "Can you hear me? Your son is in trouble. Stop your hysterics." He carefully released himself from his wife's grip. "And you calmly tell me this without reproach, without asking anything. Would it make a difference? You're right. And that's why I feel so bad, like I've committed a felony. Vic, you can look into your vulnerable soul later. Now go find out what's wrong with the boy. A child is not to blame for the mistakes of adults." When Vic was already at the door, his wife called out to him, "I'll go with you. It will be easier for me to sort things out. After all, you have not forgotten that I am a pediatrician by training." The man was surprised by his wife's reaction, but he was even more surprised by his own fear. He was afraid not for his son, but for himself. More precisely, at that moment, he was worried about the effect the discovery might have on his reputation. He was sure that Kathy would forgive him for his infidelity. By evening, Jack's condition had deteriorated. He refused to eat, complaining of nausea and dizziness. Laura called an ambulance. The doctor examined the child for a long time, then looked at the conclusion from the diagnostic center and returned the documents to the mother. He indifferently said, "Unfortunately, we can't help you now. This is not our competence. Now we will give him an injection to make him sleep. I advise you to see the doctor who examined you tomorrow. But how can I take a sick child with me?" "Mom, this is your problem, and you have to solve it." After the injection, Jack fell asleep, but slept restlessly. Around midnight, hurried footsteps were heard in the hallway, followed by a knock on the door. Laura, without turning around, whispered, "Come in. Only please be quiet." The woman thought it was the dormitory superintendent, but a familiar voice made her turn around. "Laura, it's me." In the semi-darkness of the room, the woman could not make out that Vic came accompanied by a well-dressed companion. "Meet Kathy, my wife. You were talking to her." Laura did not know how to behave in such a situation. She shifted her gaze from Vic to his wife, but said nothing. Kathy took off his coat. "Where can I wash my hands around here?" Laura gasped. "I'll show you. Come here." She was completely confused. Her mother watched Katie's every move. She looked at the awake child. "He must be taken to the hospital immediately. It's not safe to stay at home. I can't say anything about an examination right now, but the boy's lungs are wheezing." "Did the ER doctor tell you that?" "No, he just said that our hospital doesn't deal with such cases and he should be transferred to the regional hospital." "He wasn't wrong about that. We've prepared a car for you." The boy was immediately taken to the intensive care unit. Laura begged to see her son, but the doctors were adamant. "Calm down, Mom. You can't do that. We have very strict rules. When the baby is better, you can visit him." But the woman wouldn't leave. In the morning, a tired Katie came to see her. "Laura, go home. You're only torturing yourself here. I'll take care of Jack. You may not trust me, but believe me, I care about your son. It just so happens God didn't give me any children, but this is our Vic's son. Maybe you'll never forgive me." "For what?" "Because my husband cheated on me with you, but he still stayed with me." Katie returned to the NICU, where a whole team of doctors was already working on the sick baby. "Colleagues, I'm begging you. Please do what you can for this baby. I need to get some rest." "Sure, Katie, we'll let you know." Vic was overwhelmed by the lingering grief. He looked at his wife, who had returned, and didn't know what to say to her. She came to his rescue again. "Vic, let's leave all explanations for later. Especially in such a situation, words will not help. But today, unexpectedly, I realized that I am ready to forgive you for your betrayal. I am even ready to share the pain with this poor Laura, whom you also betrayed so meanly." Already in a different voice, the man said, "You act honorably toward strangers." She pounced on him with fists. "Vic, take off that mask of hypocrisy. Strangers, how can you say that about your own child? If I said that, it would be understandable. But you're a father. Is your job more important to you? Your professorial reputation?" The man collapsed on the hallway floor and cried bitterly. "Katie, I don't know. I'm completely confused." Suddenly calm, Kathy said, "But I know what to do. It's your baby, which means he's precious to me too. Your Laura can't give the boy what we can." "Katie, what are you up to?" "You know the answer to that, and I think it's the right thing to do." Vic had nothing to say to his wife, and he agreed. At this moment, he was not thinking about Laura, who happened to get in his way and whose life he shattered. But the unhappy mother had no idea of the ordeal that awaited her. The next day, Laura came to see Anna. After listening to her, Anna stood up and said, "Laura, I want you to listen to me. I sympathize with your problems. I'm terribly sorry about your son, but you have to realize that we don't have anyone to work in your place. We're constantly having to ask you to fill in. You should quit your job." Laura shook her head. "I can't. You do realize that then we'd be completely lost with Jack." Anna stepped close to her. "Look, this isn't the time when that was possible. This is a different time. And I'm giving you 2 days. If you don't solve your problems, I'll just fire you on the spot, and then you can run around the courts and prove you're insane." "I understand, Anna." Laura walked quickly out of the office to keep from bursting into tears. She wanted to work, she really did. Was it her fault that things had turned out this way? When she arrived at the hospital, Jack had already been moved to a room. The boy was alone, sleeping all the time. Katie was sitting by his bedside. She was looking at Jack with such tenderness that Laura was once again amazed by this woman. "Hello?" Kathy looked up, staring at Laura for a long moment before answering. "Hello, Laura." Strange, she should hate this Laura, but she felt nothing but pity for her. "How is he, Kathy?" "Laura, it's not very good. It's more like very bad. It's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of money to get Jack back on his feet." Laura looked at her with widened eyes and just didn't know what to say. "But I don't have any money. Jack and I have been living very modestly." Katie stood up and walked over to her. "Laura, I want to talk to you. I really hope you love your son enough to listen to me and evaluate the situation objectively." For some reason, Laura felt an uneasy feeling in her soul. She had completely forgotten that to Kathy, she was just someone her husband had cheated on her with. "All right, I'll try to listen to you." Katie closed her eyes as if gathering her thoughts. Years ago, when I wasn't married to Vic, yet I wasn't envied by many girls, almost all of them. I may not have shown it, but I walked around very proud. Well, happy too. We were already living together, though we weren't married yet. One day, those who Vic had turned down decided that I needed to be put in my place in life, and they started talking about my Vic cheating on me. I listened to everything with an impassive face, even though it took a lot of effort. I replied that I didn't believe a word of it, and I didn't need to hang out with people who spread gossip anymore. I just ran home and felt so bad that I was scared. My stomach was twisting. It hurt. Vic called an ambulance. It turned out that I had miscarried and would not be able to have any more children. Laura watched as tears streamed down Katie's cheeks. She felt sorry for this seemingly strong woman, but Laura didn't understand why she needed to know all this. Roma and I got married right away, and he didn't care what the doctor said. We loved each other, and that was the most important thing. But, as you can imagine, time has a way of putting things in their proper place. I couldn't look at the kids. I was working in a children's hospital at the time. Little children, who sometimes had to be saved literally, haunted me at night. I thought I was going crazy. Vic's a psychologist. You of all people should know that. He saw everything that was happening to me. I'm sure he wanted a baby as much as I did. But he never, ever talked about it first. We wanted to adopt from an orphanage. Yes, we seriously considered that option. But again, it was about me. I thought about it and I realized I couldn't do it. You see, that child would be a complete stranger to us. We wouldn't know anything about who gave birth to him, what kind of people he was, what kind of heredity he had, and even diseases didn't scare me. I'm a doctor myself, and I could have fixed a lot of things. Genetics, I had to come to terms with it. Sometimes when despair overwhelmed me to the point where it was hard to breathe, I thought I had to trick Vic. Vic and I would have a baby. At least Vic would be happy in this life. Morning came and I realized I didn't need it, because then Vic would be gone wherever his child was. I was sure of my husband, sure he would never cheat. And then you called. First, I was ready to kill him. Then I wanted to kill you. Then all those thoughts were replaced by the one thought that was most important to Vic. My Vic has a child, his flesh and blood, and that baby needs help. In the 2 days I was with Jack, I realized what a blessing it is to have such a little boy. Laura, Vic told me everything about the way he pushed you away and the situation you're in, and that you're not doing so well either. You can't handle it. You can't put your son back on his feet. You don't have the strength or the means to do that. I want you to understand. You're gonna ruin your son. No, I can do this. I'm not gonna let Jack die. Laura was crying. Katie sat across from her. Tell me, what are you going to do next? Jack must be taken to the capital, and from there, perhaps abroad. Where will you get the money? Let's think of something else, Katie asked firmly. Well, answer me not as a knave girl, but as a mother, as a grown woman. How are you going to save your son? Laura cried. She realized that everything Katie was saying was true. There was nothing she could do, nothing at all. Do you realize that we have to do something? And it has to be done very quickly. Laura nodded. Then I look forward to hearing what you have to say. There was silence in the room for a long moment. Katie stood up. I understand that you're hoping this will work itself out, but you're not a child, Laura. As a doctor, I can tell you that the worst is yet to come. Laura raised her head and looked at her tear-stained face. What am I going to do then? Katie stepped closer to her. Just let us take him away. Vic is, after all, his father, his own father, you understand. I've grown attached to Jack. I'll be a good mother to him. I couldn't do that with someone else's kid. Jack is Vic's son. We can take care of him. We have money. We have connections. We have everything you don't. You realize that the kid lived with his mother, and now he's just going to live with his father. We'll do everything we can to make the boy well, but you don't have to be around anymore. Laura looked at Katie with eyes full of horror. What are you saying? I'm not giving you my son. You're out of your mind. Katie leaned toward her. Am I crazy? You're my girl. You don't understand the real situation. I'll be you one day. Here's my number. Kathy handed Laura a business card and left the room. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. She took a deep breath. How hard this conversation had been for her. But if she let go of unnecessary emotions, it was the only way she could be a little happier. Laura, she's helpless, spineless. She can't give Jack anything. She'll grow up to be some kind of plumber. Well, maybe a driver. Katie took a deep breath and headed toward the doctor's office. Doctor, may I? The doctor jumped up from behind his desk. Oh, Katie, why do you ask? Of course I can. Tea? Coffee? Doctor, I need to have a very serious talk with you. Sit down, I'm listening to you very carefully. Katie looked around. She went into the office and closed the door behind her. No, don't even ask. It's a felony. Katie clapped her hands together. If I'm not mistaken, you have a daughter, and as I recall, she's in trouble with the law, with drinking. The doctor froze and turned away. How do you know that? Your wife left you, and you have to take care of an alcoholic daughter, and an old mother who can barely walk. The doctor sank into a chair. Since we can't make a good deal, I'll have to make it so you can't work anywhere in this town. Although I really don't want to do that. You're a great doctor, a good, honest man. The doctor looked up at her. Tell me, why do you want to do this? I don't have children, and as you understand, I won't have any. This is my husband's child, an accidental liaison. This woman, his mother, can't give Jack anything, she can't cure him, and he will suffer on public assistance. We can give him whatever he needs. Understand, if you help me, you will make several people happy at once. The doctor looked at her. Laura, she'll be happier. Well, for one thing, she's already deeply unhappy. Do you think a mother who can't even buy her child sweets can be happy? And secondly, you realize that sometimes you can sacrifice one person to save a few. The doctor sat silent for a long time. Kathy didn't rush him. Finally, he looked up. I agree. I will do as you ask. Good. Get ready for the pulpit next week. Laura sat by her son's bedside all night. She just sat and looked at him, like she wanted to memorize every feature of him. In the morning, when it started to get light outside, she kissed him and left. I'm sorry, son. Remember that Mommy loves you very much. You mean everything to me. Yesterday, before they went to bed, the doctor came to their room. He sat down across from Laura. Doctor, what's wrong? I have some bad news. The diagnosis has been confirmed. Your son will have to undergo a very long and expensive treatment. It's the only treatment that can give him a chance. The doctor's gone. Laura looked at her son and whispered, That's it. It's all decided. She closed the door to the room, walked over to the nurse's station. Can I make a phone call? Yeah, sure. It's me. I'll take it. Laura hung up the phone and slowly walked toward the hospital exit. She had solved her problems. I've come to resign. What do you mean by that? Anna looked at Laura as if she was seeing her for the first time in her life. Are you offended? Well, don't be. The job's barking at me. I understand. I understand that when a child is sick, nothing else matters. Where's Jack, at the hospital? Well, if you want, we can get you a vacation. But it's unpaid. You realize you're on paid leave for the next 5 years. And then Laura couldn't take it anymore. No, I don't want a vacation. I don't want any more vacations. I understand. She burst into tears and rushed out of the principal's office. She didn't go home. It was unbearable to be there. She wanted to climb the walls. She wandered around the city until evening. When it began to get dark, she went to the park, sat on a bench, and began to howl and cry. She didn't know how much time had passed. She woke up to someone touching her arm. It would get better soon. Laura turned around. There was a woman sitting next to her, like a homeless woman. She held out a cup to her. There was some kind of liquid in the cup. Laura thought it was water. She grabbed the cup, drank it in one gulp, choked and coughed. It's okay. It's the first time. It's hard at first. Then it'll get easier. Laura felt a release. Her nerves didn't seem so tense anymore. Everything still seemed awful, but not to this extent. One more thing. Laura nodded. She hadn't realized that a strong drink could bring such relief. She looked at the homeless woman with interest. Well, what are you looking at? I used to cry and worry like that too. My husband found a young girl, took her out of the apartment and threw her out on the street. But then I realized I had a drink, and there was no more trouble. I would wake up feeling bad, but that was only until I drank again, and that wouldn't make it better. Laura drank some more and realized she still wanted to live. Yes, things were bad for her, but maybe there were people who had it even worse. A year later, Laura successfully sold her room. The neighbors were surprised that she, a friendly and decent woman, had disappeared. The police were called several times when Laura was visited by her new friends from the street. Eventually, when they found out she was selling her room, everyone crossed themselves. Jack came to his senses quickly, and after their family trip to the sea, he forgot he was ill at all. It hurt a lot that he didn't have his mom anymore, but Kathy's mom said that mommy is in heaven now and she's fine there. She is looking after Jack, so Jack had to be well behaved and do well in school. And he did. By 8th grade, it was clear that if Jack continued to be as determined as he was, they could get a gold medal. Kathy was even more proud of Jack than Vic was. One day, when they were already in bed, Vic said, "You know, sometimes I look at you too and I'm even a little jealous. Jack and I are blood relatives, and I love him very much, but I'm nowhere near the relationship you and he have." Katie sat up abruptly. "Don't you ever dare say that Jack isn't my blood relative. He is. He's my closest relative." Vic thought Kathy was going crazy, but she suddenly calmed down. "Vic, I understand everything, but sometimes I forget that Jack isn't mine. Please don't remind me of that." Vic put his arm around her. "You know, Kathy, you're the best to me. If I could turn back time, I'd marry you again." She snuggled against him and said, "Let's go to bed. We still have to make sandwiches for Jack in the morning." Vic playfully pouted and said, "What about me? Are you going to the cafe?" Vic laughed. He was ready to go to the cafe. He was even willing to eat nothing, just so he could go, and it would be okay. Sometimes he felt a pinch, but he quickly suppressed it. On the day of Jack's graduation, Vic was running late. Kathy called him several times. "Vic, I can't understand it. Your son is about to get a medal, and you don't seem to care." "Kathy, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm trying to get through, but it's completely gridlocked." Vic's been cut off. Vic, breaking all the rules, swerved across the double solid line, but he couldn't tell Katie he had a surprise for her and Jack. He drove toward the school with a screech of tires, almost hitting some homeless guy. He jumped out of the car and bumped into her. "Why the hell are you in the way?" She turned around. Vic met her gaze and froze. It was Laura. He shook his head. "Yeah, but this is bullshit. It must have been a mistake." That evening as they went to bed, Vic said to Kathy, "I saw some bums today." Kathy smiled. "You won't believe this, but I see them every day." "Kathy, it was Laura." Kathy jumped up. "I'm not 100% sure, but 99% sure." "Vic, you're imagining things." "Look, I wasn't imagining it." "Kathy, I'm all for it. As long as she's not here, there won't be a problem. You hear me? Let's not think about it anymore." About 3 months passed. Kathy scrutinized the faces of the women huddled around the garbage cans, but then she calmed down. Jack went to law school. Kathy was proud of her son. She was ready to be with him 24/7. But one day, the thing she feared most in the world happened. They were having dinner. Katie loved family moments like this. They didn't happen very often. Everyone was working. Jack was studying. "Mom, Dad, I've been meaning to ask you." "Go ahead, son." Vic looked at his son with a smile. The more Jack looked, the more he looked like him. Kathy laughed and said they even had the same gestures. "How come we never went to Mom's grave?" Vic coughed. The fork slipped out of Katie's hands. "Jack, why would we visit her? We don't even know where she's buried." "What, didn't you bury her?" "No, Jack, we were busy treating you at the time." "Could you have died? We never left your side." Jack nodded, and Kathy seemed to age 20 years at once, while Vic sat stunned. "Okay, Jack." As soon as her son left the table, Kathy lashed out at her husband. "You don't dare give him Laura's address, Vic." Vic grabbed her arm. "Listen to me. I'm sure Laura doesn't live there. Jack won't be able to find out anything. And if we start spinning lies, it's going to be very suspicious." Katie thought for a moment. "You know, you're right. Jack has some kind of weird feeling when he goes up to where he used to live." The door was opened by some guy. "Excuse me, please, the woman named Laura used to live here about 15 years ago." "So, I remember this room. I bought it last year when I got divorced. So I don't know any Laura, and I wouldn't advise you to look for women like that. They bring nothing but trouble." The guy slammed the door shut, and Jack sighed. "Well, where to go now?" Suddenly someone tugged on his sleeve. Are you looking for someone? An older woman stood next to him. Yes, I'm looking for someone. Perhaps you remember a woman named Laura who lived here. The old woman nodded. I remember. How could I have forgotten? Jack rejoiced. Maybe you can tell me where she's buried? The old woman looked at him strangely. Come with me. We'll have some tea. I have a feeling you're the same boy who was with Laura. In the room on the sofa, entangled in wires, sat a young girl. She jumped up, even dropping her book. Hello, and looked at the old woman in surprise. Lima, granddaughter, make us some tea. We need to talk. Jack watched the girl with amusement. She seemed to be from another world. Not a gram of makeup, although makeup would have only ruined her thick hair. She was wearing modern jeans, but they suited her well. Lima set the table and sat down, eyeing Jack with interest. I know you too. You're in law school too. Only a year ahead of me. That can't be right. If you went there, I'd remember you. Lima smiled, and Jack turned to the old lady. The woman paused for a moment and spoke. I'm the only one left from the old days. Someone moved away. Someone died. Laura, I remember her room. Some guy bought it. He used to come here sometimes, probably your father. Jack nodded. Laura was a good girl. What did she see in that old man? We never did figure it out. After that, she started disappearing. Sometimes for a couple days, sometimes longer. And then she was gone. So she wasn't here anymore. Then we found out for sure. And then she got really sick and probably died in the hospital. She started drinking. Jack sat staring at the old woman, not blinking, not moving. He had been told that his mother had died while he was in the hospital. And the old woman spoke as if she had died much later. Excuse me, are you sure you're not mistaken? I was told that my mother died when I was in the hospital. I sensed something was wrong when Laura started drinking. She was crying and screaming, saying her son had been taken away from her. Jack stared ahead. That couldn't be true. Maybe she'd been drinking even before the baby was gone. No, she wasn't there at all. She was a good one. About a year after the baby was born, she sold that room. She sold it. We'd all breathed a sigh of relief because we couldn't fight her and her friends anymore. Jack was in such shock, he just didn't know what to say. He needed to talk to his parents, to ask them all the questions. He wanted to understand why. He stood up. Thanks for the tea. I'll be off. Wait, I haven't told you everything yet. What else? She's not dead, your mother. I literally saw her outside our store 3 days ago, collecting money. She didn't look human at all. Apparently, Jack looked so scary that Lima was scared. Here, take some water and drink. He obediently took a few sips. Better? Yes, thank you. I'll go look for her. Lima jumped up. I'll go with you, wherever you go in this condition. Jack didn't say anything. Let her go if she wants to. They walked around the neighborhood, searching all the dumpsters, but they didn't find anyone even remotely similar. Jack turned to Lima. Thank you so much for keeping me company. Let me walk you out. And you won't look anymore? Of course I will. I'll come by tomorrow after school. Jack aggressively questioned his parents. The father was the first to give up. He told everything softly, not even looking at Jack. After his story, Jack stood up. How could you do that? She's a living person. Katie looked at him with tearful eyes. Mom, don't you understand anything? You just slandered a human being for your own benefit. With Lima, they searched for a week. Finally, the girl said, we're doing something wrong. Maybe she doesn't just live in this neighborhood. There are so many homeless people in the city, you can't get around them in a year. Besides, you don't even have a picture. What do you remember from your childhood? She could be completely different. Jack looked at her with interest. So what are you suggesting? A first-year student. I suggest we start the interrogations, but before we do that, we need to get the necessary paper. What kind of paper? Are you planning on becoming a lawyer too? Half a letter. At the store. They got strange looks when they took 5 bottles of vodka. At least an appetizer. Lima smiled widely. Are you kidding, Naughty? Appetizers steal the degree. The clerk snorted. Lima headed for the exit with a nonchalant look. Jack stood in the road for a while. Then he caught up with Lim. You're something. On the 3rd bottle, or rather on the 3rd bottle, you give to the bums. They found out there was a Laura just a week ago. She was hit by a car, drunk. Now she's in the hospital. But who treats the homeless these days? They're gonna send her to a shelter. She'll die there. Lima, I'm going to the hospital. What do you think? Would I let you go alone? Lima opened the door to the room. Jack immediately saw her voice and whispered behind her. Then she held out the shipping papers. Laura turned her head slowly. She looked at them for a long time, then whispered, "My son." Jack was in the hospital every day. Lima was busy restoring Jack's documents and solving other problems, medication, clothing, and where Laura would live after he was discharged. He only came home to change his clothes. Mom and Dad stared at him in silence, not giving him a chance to speak. He left quickly. Jack couldn't hate them because he loved them, but he couldn't be around them either. Laura was already starting to come to her senses. Jack realized, to his surprise, that his mother still looked very young after the days she hadn't been drinking. After a while, and it became apparent that she had once been very beautiful. "Jack, you look so much like Vic." "Yeah, I know, don't worry, I won't touch another drop. I swear to you. I believe you." There was a knock at the door. It must be Lima, your very good girl. But it wasn't her, it was Mom and Dad. Jack looked at them with amazement. Laura with fear. "Hello, Laura. Hello, Jack. Why have you come?" "Jack, we came to apologize to all of you and to ask you to raise Laura." Jack's right. Thinking of our own happiness, we've just been mean to you. "No, you saved my son. He didn't need saving. The doctor's diagnosis was inconclusive. I made them say all that." Laura looked at them. There was so much pain in her eyes. "Why? Why did you do this to me? First Vic, then you." Katie wiped away her tears. "I'm sorry, Laura. I have nothing more to say." She handed the keys to Jack. "This is Dad's old apartment. We transferred it to you. It's 2 rooms. So what?" 6 months later, Lima, happy in a white dress, stood next to Jack at the registry office. There weren't many guests. Lima's grandmother, Laura, and a few friends. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The door swung open. Jack froze. On the threshold of the ceremonial hall stood a crying Kathy, and in Vic's hands was a bouquet of roses. Jack turned to Laura. "Mom, I'm sorry, I don't know how they found out." He really wanted to hug his parents. He missed them terribly, but he didn't want to hurt Laura. Laura gave him a gentle push forward. "Go on. I'm the one who told them. You mustn't hold it against them. They truly love you. You can do a lot for love." Jack took a few steps toward them. Katie rushed to him, hugged him, cried, then hugged Lima, then hugged Laura. "You're a golden person, Laura. Your soul is enough to hug the whole world."
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.